Hello and welcome to From Mrs. to Me, a podcast where you'll be inspired by courageous stories of strength and resilience told by women just like you who have been through the upheaval of divorce. This is their journey from Mrs. to Me, finding their true identity and creating a bold, beautiful life. I'm Crissy Freeman and I'm your host, a certified life coach and divorced mother of two. Join me each week as we explore real stories of divorce and what it takes to transform and live in alignment with the real you. Hello and welcome to another episode of From Mrs. to Me. I'm your host, Crissy Freeman. My next guest, Diane Murphy, is a grounded yet magical and mystical teacher, mentor, and visionary space holder. As a registered nurse for almost 40 years, she embraces science, even with its limitations, as she also holds spiritual concepts and sacred teachings close to her heart. Her passion is to nurture others, to calm their stressed minds, connect fully to their bodies, find clarity of purpose, and to develop courage and confidence to step fully into their highest selves. Wow, I am so grateful that Diane has joined us today. And I say that there are no accidents in life, and meeting Diane for me was truly no accident. When I first moved to my new home in the fall, a friend of mine had told me about this amazing yoga meditation class that I needed to go to on Sundays with this amazing teacher, Diane. And I just have to tell the audience, the second I stepped into her class, I knew I was home. I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Her energy is literally like a warm hug. And so welcome, Diane. I'm so happy to share you and your work with our audience.
Oh, thank you so much. That really cracked my heart wide open, made me get a little teary. I appreciate that so much, and that's why I do this work, is to help people have an experience like that. My archetypes really are a nurturer first, teacher second, and then a visionary.
Well,
and
I am so happy to have you here. And as you know, Diane, on this podcast, we talk about the transformation from Mrs. to Me. And the theme really is about the journey to finding you after divorce, who we are outside of the marriage, and this road to living an authentic life. So, as someone who has been divorced, can you share with the audience what you did? What did your healing path to rediscovery look like after divorce?
Well, I would have to say it was pretty much a spiral. Definitely, I think of the healing path as a spiral where we kind of are in the pits of despair and we learn and we grow a little bit, but then we go down again and we might have another dark night of the soul and we spiral up. So I feel like life is like that. I feel like every time there was something in my life regarding, I've been married a couple times, and every time I had a marriage end or a relationship end, in the depths of despair, there was tremendous growth. So it's interesting because I look back and think, wow, that was so hard. And yet, if that didn't happen at that period of time, I wouldn't have had A, B, and C happen, right? So I think it's all this beautiful path. So it unfolded for me in this wave, right? So it kind of crested, like, growing and then going through something else and then going down into the depths of despair. So I think what I would have to say is that each time my level of faith and trust in a higher power grew substantially. And it became, I would describe it different at different times in my life. At one point, I was going to a Christian church and very involved in that. And then there were some things that kind of happened that didn't quite meet me in my heart and my soul the way I wanted that feeling to be. So I expanded in different ways, in different studies of different other spiritual teachings. And then as I went through another situation years later, again, another growth pattern occurred. And it was around 2000 that I went through a pretty rough breakup. And I was a single mom at the time. I had 4 kids, and one of them was a teenager. And I started practicing yoga. This was the days of VHS tapes. And I had a few yoga tapes that I would practice with. And I noticed right away how the yoga practices really helped to create a shift in my body, yes, but I was noticing these subtle changes in my mind and my mood, and my anxiety was better, and episodes of depression weren't as significant and keeping me down. So that was in 2000, and it's 24 years of practicing and growing more and more, becoming a teacher, becoming a coach, a Reiki master. Those types of things have just exponentially helped me to grow as a human being and a woman. So, yeah, I mean, I look back, and there were times that where I was definitely in a lot of blame of other person, not me. It was like I had my shit together, and why can't you have your shit together? And like this ego, like I'm doing this right, and you're not. You made the mistake, or you left, and it took a lot of peeling away of layers. And the yoga practice was so helpful with that, to help me see that, hey, a lot of this is right here. So it's really helped me to get out of blame and shame.
Yes.
And into a sense of, this experience happened for my growth and development. Yes, painful. I put my kids through a lot, that I really still have, guilt and remorse about. And yet as a human and as a teacher, I feel like that has profoundly impacted me and the work that I do and bring into the world, because I feel like I can have so much empathy and compassion for people, because, I've been through the ringer myself numerous times.
Yeah, you have taught me, Diane, so much about the mind, and specifically as we talk about the ego mind and how powerful it can be. And, I just had an experience with it this weekend, and I went live this morning and talked about it, because it was this story around, you should be here by now. You should be here. And but it's the same thing with divorce. And it reminded me of, after my divorce, how I kept questioning, am I where I need to be? Should I be in a relationship by now? Should I be, financially more stable? The mind just kept wanting to tell me this story. And what I realized was, it was this old story of a child, when my mother used to say to me, you know what you should do? And I would take my direction from that. And now my mind almost has developed this pattern over time where it's like, you know what you should do? And what I've learned is that, and yoga has taught me this too, as well as your classes, is in that moment when you see that, if you can start noticing your mind, if you can truly start stepping back and saying, okay, let me just ground myself in this moment and say, is that really true? is that really true, what I'm telling myself? So whether it's the guilt or as a mom, or whether it's, this person, judgment of another person, all of that is our ego mind telling us a story. And until we get out of that, it's once we get out of that and we clear that out, that all of the beautiful gifts and things start coming in. And so I just realized my microphone's over here. So it isn't until I think we truly can notice the mind, step back and just notice what it's doing, that we can start to present ourselves and make decisions from a place of truth and balance. And so thank you for that, because your story is so beautiful. And, I know that you've also been a nurse for 40 years and have moved into sort of pursuing your passion and your purpose. And I would love for you to tell the audience, as we think about divorce, so many women say, well, yeah, sure. I can start to do this work to figure out who I am and what my passion is. But how do I actually take steps? Well, first, how do I identify what that is real and that lights me up? And then second, how do I take steps to pursue that? How did you do that? How did you, go from being a nurse to also identifying that, wait a minute, there's something else that I want to pursue, and actually taking steps towards doing that?
Well, I will tell you that I never desired to be a nurse. I was a single mom at the time. I had a little baby, and I decided to go back to school. And because in my community, in my family, we were on the lower side of middle class, I would say, and so there was sometimes this thing like you have a baby at a young age, you go on state help, and then that's what you do, right? And then you stay at home and take care of your baby. And I had this judgment of that, and I mean, now I look at it differently. At the time, I was like, I'm not going to be that person. I'm going to go back to school. I want to support my son. And again, no judgment to anyone who accepts that help, because I did for many years, right? I'm just saying at the time, that's how I felt. Definitely had a lot of projection there. But so I went back to school. Well, I basically was kind of talked into nursing. I was just like, where do I sign up for something that will pay really well? Because I'm a single mom. So, and then over time, there were many things I loved about my nursing career. I loved the patients. I loved the people I worked with. I was challenged in the whole medical model of, especially as I grew and matured as a nurse and increased my knowledge. I was challenged with the there's a medicine for this, there's a medicine for that, and there's a medicine for that side effect. And again, no judgment for people who take medicine. I just felt there was more. There was a deeper aspect, especially as I was working in mental health and substance use disorder treatment as a nurse. I just always felt like I feel like there's something else I can help with. Like I love the deeper conversations, like what drove you, like the past issues and the mind and the soul and the spiritual parts. So I was practicing yoga, and I wanted to go further in my studies. So I decided I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And it took me a few years to get the confidence and figuring out my schedule and managing the cost of training and that whatnot. Because I felt so passionate about it. So I figured out how to do it. And I did multiple trainings. Once you do one as a yoga teacher, you get kind of addicted to them. But I really felt like I could use these skills in a much broader capacity. So as working as a nurse, I did share a lot of yoga practices, breath practices, meditation practices, concepts with patients, and as I would run groups and work with people individually. And then I really wanted to just become a full-time yoga teacher. And I'm very much a Pisces, so I have a lot of dreaminess in me. And sometimes not the like, first you do this, you do this. Instead, it was like, I'm just going to jump into this. And luckily at the time, I've been with my current partner for almost 9 years, and he's been extremely supportive of me and encouraging. So back in 2018, I left my last nursing job and dove in to start my own business as a yoga teacher. And I'll tell you what, anyone out there, if you want to grow exponentially, spiritually, and get down into your shadow and see like the stuff that needs to be healed, start your own business. Because you find out right away where
Yes.
challenges lie in your thought processes and how they're not maybe always so helpful. So if anyone ever wanted advice on that or coaching, I would love to help you, because I would say, here's some things to maybe not do that I did. Because I think I learned the hard way. But suffice it to say that with time and effort and using this work on myself first as the experiment, these are the things that have helped me. I just don't learn stuff to be like, oh, now I'm going to go out and teach this thing that has no, relevance in my life, but I want to just teach all the stuff. And no, I teach the things that are relevant for me, that have helped me, grow and continue to evolve. I'm not done this process. The layers continue to come off. And that's what life is about. But it's really taken courage, faith, tears, gnashing of teeth to step into this new career and offering as a person, as a spiritual teacher and facilitator. And it's been some of the most meaningful experiences, sharing my gifts with my students like yourself, that, people come in and say, oh, I'm not getting into bragging or anything. I'm just saying, like, people say, well, oh, this class was so great, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it's like, you don't know how much that fed my soul today. Like, to have you in my class, to look at you, and that made my heart just burst with so much happiness and love. So yes, it's possible to make those changes in your life and your career at any age. I was in my 50s when I shifted.
Yes, same. And first of all, for anyone who has ever been in one of Diane's classes, and I'm not just saying this because she's in front of me right now, that she is doing what she's supposed to be doing. Like that is this spiritual work, what you are doing, how you are guiding people. It's a gift. It's a gift you've been given. And I love to be able to tell people on here, we all have gifts. It's finding those gifts, tapping into them, and then using them to shine your light. Because I'm telling you, when I talk about, living an authentic life, that's what it is. It's allowing those gifts that we all have inside of us to shine. And that's when people are drawn to you, because you're tapping into that energy, and that energy is flowing out into the universe. It's flowing out to others. And that's why people are drawn to you. And I think when you're trying too hard to access something like, what is my purpose? It's not going to come, because that energy is not the right energy that's flowing out of you.
Absolutely.
It's really doing the work like I'm doing with Diane to tap in. And it's a regular thing. It's not, one and done. I go to one of her classes and then boom, I'm good. I don't need any more of Diane's classes because she helped me today. No, it's constant work of really tapping in. And to that spiritual nature that's inside of all of us. So that is a gift. And Okay, we are back live again. We had a little bit of a connection issue here, but you'll see if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see Diane is in this beautiful new space, and the connection is beautiful. So I do want to go back though and just highlight a couple of things that we were sharing just before we lost our connection there, which is we were talking about one of the things about Diane, which I love, which is that when you're in her classes that she is doing what she's supposed to do. Her gifts are so apparent. And that is what we all want, right? We all want to be living in alignment with our purpose, our passion, what lights us up. But so many of the women I talk to, and probably those of you listening, struggle for so long around what is my purpose? How do I pursue it? How do I find it? How do I even know where to start? And so, Diane, I know you do a ton of work around helping people to sort of tap into that inner place where you can access, where you can quiet the mind and truly start to access what is true. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about that around what does it mean to actually find your purpose? Do we all have a purpose? And what is the work that you do to help people to find that?
Well, that was always a really big thing for me as well. What am I meant to do? Why am I here? And so I did a lot of studying, and I've taken some courses and also some certifications and coaching certification in actual soul purpose coaching, because I was like, what is my purpose? And what I really realized is that I'm living my purpose. I've been living my purpose all my life. And how I really came to grips with the fact that it's not like something you go out and strive for. It's something in you. You don't have to be like, I'm going to check off all these boxes, therefore I'm now living in my purpose. Or I'm going to go to someone and they're going to tell me my purpose. Because as a coach, a soul purpose coach, and that's how I describe myself, and a spiritual coach, I don't tell you your purpose. I help you recognize your purpose and draw that out and live in it in a way that's feeling really satisfying, gratifying. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your purpose is your job or your career, right? It doesn't mean that. It could mean that. Could be that you get paid for it. But it most likely is the way you live your life. So how I went about it and the way I work with my own clients is I use astrology, I use human design, and I use the concept from the Dharma coaching program that I attended which is through Sahara Rose, her Dharma Coaching Institute. And Dharma, there's many definitions of Dharma, but what we're talking about for this particular offering that I do, Dharma means your soul purpose, this particular type of Dharma. So how do those things help someone that when they're working with me? This is how they've worked for me in my own life. When I learned more about my own astrological birth chart, and the birth chart is really, it's about archetypes, right? So even if you might think, oh, astrology's silly, blah, blah, blah. You can think that, but it's based on archetypes, and we all have all of those archetypes within us. So when I look at my own birth chart, I saw myself and I was like, oh, that's why you do that thing, or that's why you think like that, or that's why you're like that around people, or this is how you present yourself to the world, and yet you see yourself differently. So I looked at my birth chart, and then I became more able to love myself as I was designed in my own design, right? Same thing with human design, which is another way of looking at ourselves and experimenting on deconditioning the way we've been conditioned in our lives. So I'm not sure of how familiar people are with human design, but it's another way of looking at learning about yourself via the chakras, astrology, the Kabbalah, and the I Ching. Very simplified explanation. It's a very beautiful, in-depth way to understand yourself. So what I did with that information was I could look at myself with this new lens. Instead of judging myself for being emotional, being like maybe talking too much when I'm in a group, or this is how I act with my family or with my friends, instead of judging myself and saying like, why do you do that? Or like, why do you act this way? And why do you act that way? Why do you speak that way sometimes or think that way? I looked at my charts and said, oh, I have my Mercury is in Pisces, where I have a lot of planets in Pisces. So it's no wonder that I think intuitively and emotionally, and like I have a big imagination, and it's no wonder I think that way. Or, as far as human design, my particular human design is a generator. So I'm meant to be busy in the world. I'm meant to do work out in the world, and but feel satisfied and instead of frustrated. And then as the Dharma coaching concepts, my archetypes were nurturer, teacher, and visionary. And so I said, okay, I don't have to go out and do those things. I've always been a nurturer. I've always been a teacher, and I've always been a visionary. Like, I can see how the new world could be, how life could be, how we could create heaven on earth here, right now, instead of waiting for ultimate perfection. So that's how I've brought those concepts alive in my own life, and how I bring that into my one-to-one work and into my teachings with other people. That when, for example, as a young child, I would always befriend kids who might have been the ones bullied at school, or were the outliers. And because I was drawn to them to nurture them as well, so I became a nurturer as a nurse, and a nurturer as a mom, and then now a nurturer in my yoga classes and in my coaching. So it's morphed and changed throughout our life. Our purpose is generally the same, right? But we express it differently throughout our lives. So when people say, I don't know what my purpose is, I will say, you're living your purpose right now. You're just going to try.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for explaining that, first of all. Because I think so many of us, myself included, I mean, from a young age, I remember just thinking, I know there's something more for me. I know there's something more for me. What is it? Somebody show me, tell me. And I love that you said that your purpose doesn't have to be something you get paid for. Like, it can just be living your life and just shining that brightly, your energy, what you bring. And I think it all comes down to, how do we tap into that authentic self? How do you really access who we are? And I think, that's one of the things that so many people struggle with is, who am I at my core? And accessing that is so hard. And so I love that you shared, how you use astrology. And it's not just about, I know you and I had a brief conversation. I was talking about my sign and my partner's sign, and how we both are Sagittarius, but so different. And so I always thought, well, if you're a Sagittarius, you must also be, really love people, and you must be really outgoing, and you must, have a lot of energy. And, but it's not that way. There's so many other factors other than just your sign, right? And so that, to me, fascinates me, because you talked about the chakras, and there's so many things, I think, that from an astrology perspective, it's amazing the power of the universe. I just have to say that because this moon that we just had, Diane, I don't know what that was all about, but let me tell you, as someone who works with people on a regular basis and looking at my own self and my daughter and my own life, that there's something to
Oh,
this
yeah.
because energetically what happened to everybody was
Are you
insane.
speaking specifically about the last full moon in Scorpio?
Yes. 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 Can you just, and I know this isn't necessarily about the topic we're talking about, but I think it's really important because I think people need to pay more attention to that kind of stuff. And it speaks to the work that you do. What was happening or what happens with when we have those shifts, like with a full moon?
Well, we could talk about this in a lot of depth there because there are so many things happening. But let me say briefly about the moon. It waxes and wanes. The power comes, the power goes. And if anyone disagrees with the fact that the moon affects us, check out the tides, check out the animals, check out the oceans, the way that animals, even our plants, have amazing capacity to shift with the moon. So there is that sense of effect on us as human beings because we are a living, breathing part of nature here. We are nature. So when you have a full moon, the sun is illuminating the moon because it's opposite. So it's going to magnify whatever sign it's in. So our last full moon was in Scorpio, and Scorpio is a water sign, which is very emotional, but it's a very in-depth, deep, and dark sign. It's intense. Whereas Pisces and Cancer are more softer, mutable energy, where the Scorpio is like, I want to be intense. I want to go deep. I'm going to feel these emotions. And sometimes people can feel the sharpness of that stinger from Scorpio, right? It's about transformation, the powerful transformation. But when we have a new moon, that's the dark moon, right? That's because the sun and the moon are what's called conjunct. They're right next to each other in the sky. So there's no illumination there. So it's going inward, whereas the full moon is very outward energy. And the new moon is very much internalized. It's a time to set intentions. It's time to rest and recover, whereas full moons, we tend to have more energy, depending on you and your own sign and your own energy and how in touch you are with your awareness of what's happening in your energy. Because many people are walking around oblivious, okay? And that's okay. That's their path. But when you get to know these things, you notice like, oh, it's a full moon. I'm having harder time sleeping. I'm feeling more energized. Whereas the new moon, we're meant to go inward and be more reflective and internal. And then in between, so when we go from full moon heading to the new moon, our energy will start to diminish. And you think about this as a menstrual cycle too for women. It's the hormonal phases are meant. That's why we have a 28-day cycle. The moon is 28 days. So when people stop menstruating, so like me postmenopausally, I work with moon energy instead of menstrual cycle energy. The energy will over time start to wane, and then you have the new moon, and then it's starting to come forward again and build and grow. And so when we start to learn to work with those energies instead of like pushing and striving and forcing all the time, when we learn to work with moon energy, it can be very helpful in our lives, even for business. Like there's times when you're creative, there's times when you want to get little tasks done or clean your desk or clean your computer, or you go online and you're more energized. Think of that as like the ovulatory phase where you were ready to go. So that said, this past full moon, of course, was very big, and we also were just ending a Mercury retrograde that was touching on the same points of the recent big eclipse we had here, the the big solar eclipse. Okay. So the Mercury was touching on some of those points. The North Node which is it's a spot in the sky. It's not actually a planet. Those were touching the same eclipse points. And the moon was also doing this interesting square, which is some harder energy to Pluto. So Pluto is about transformation and change. So it wasn't just that we were having a full moon, but there were other energies behind it that for some people made it really feel amplified. Because if you were affected by that last eclipse, and remember, eclipses are like superpowered energies. They're very transformative, intense. So when anything was touching from last week was touching those same points of the eclipse, what you went through like back in beginning of April might have been brought up again for you to review, to go back over, or like, why am I still having this situation happen? So yeah, I mean, when we bring in these concepts and you start to play around, I like to call it experimenting. You don't look at your chart and say, that's you, that's how you are, therefore you can't change. No, it's more about information. It's we all have our own will. We have free will. There's a part of it that's semi-destined, but also, like, for example, I was born a very petite person with hazel eyes. So I can't get taller. I'm working with this. Just like my sun is in Pisces and my moon is in Scorpio. I'm working with those energies. Now, does that mean that's how I am forever and ever? No, there's a higher vibe and there's a lower vibe. Like, which energy do I want to work with and how do I play with that? So this is how I bring in those concepts into my coaching, not like you were saying, you're a Sagittarius, therefore this is what you should do. No, it's like, that's only information. Just a little layer of information. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just want to highlight some of the things that you said, because I think it's so important for us to pay attention to what's happening around us, right? And especially out there in the universe, when you talk about astrology, because we're fighting against it instead of going with the flow, right?
Yes.
My word for this year, the beginning, I try to pick like sort of an intention or a word for every year. And this year it was flow. And so I love what you do because it is living in the flow. It's the flow of the earth, the flow of what is, and not fighting against it. And what I talked about earlier about being in my ego mind yesterday, I am full on in the middle of menopause. Okay. It's not pretty some days, but I also realize that my ego mind will tell me when I'm not well or when I'm out of balance. Instead of resting, which I probably need to do in some of those times, I am going. I am I'm like, okay, I need to get out of my mind. I'm not well. So I need to do a puzzle. Nope. Now I need to make sure I clean up. Nope. Now I need to make sure I work on my business. And I'm not allowing myself to give myself what I need in that moment. And that's why I love the work that you do, because it is about being in the flow. And if we are going along with what is happening out there, I think that we would find that we're at much more peace with ourselves, in the world, instead of fighting against it. So that is what I think is so great about this. And I do feel it. I definitely feel it when things are going on astrologically. It just shifts your energy. So so thank you for your explanation on that, because I know you could go into that much further, but I think it's helpful for people to hear, because we don't give ourselves sort of that permission to rest when that's what we need to do, is just rest.
I love how you're talking about that. The other thing that you mentioned is that you choose a word every year. That's something that I've started doing the last, I think maybe 5 years, because I always used to set the New Year's resolutions. And like the majority of people out there, by February 1st, they were gone. Like,
Exactly.
I'm a failure. Therefore, I shall not set them. And then next year I set them and I'm going to do this. And then I fail again. And then I found out that, science says that we're not meant to do that. We're not meant to set
which makes sense.
Resolutions. Intentions, yes. But especially like at the beginning of the year, January for us, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's still dark. It's still cold. We still should be in hibernation mode. Now, is that a great time to imagine, to dream, to maybe make some plans, loose plans? Yeah. But working with astrology again, and just the cyclical part of nature, as you mentioned, being in flow with nature. We are nature. We're not just, I'm going to go get in nature. I am nature. So are you.
Yes.
So therefore, I am feeling the flow. So now when we start to come into spring here in Maine, where it's cold and dark, and you see people literally crawling out of holes to go outside when it's sunny out, like, oh, here I come. I'm out, like the buds coming out of the ground, and I'm going out into the sun. Now that's the time to take action on your goals, because the energy is coming up. We've gone into Aries, which is like the zodiacal new year, right? The beginning of the zodiacal calendar. Therefore, I've got energy. I've got some motivation. But when we do that stuff back in January, February, we're probably not going to be able to follow through. And not to mention just the astrology of it, the energy of nature, but science-wise, the way our brain works, that's just not how we're meant to roll. We have to do things in a way where we set a goal. You've heard of SMART goals and those types of things. It has to be, small steps towards the thing. You take little baby steps, because what you have to do is you have to show your nervous system that it's safe to take the step. And what happens is people set the huge goal, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's great to dream. It's great to have desires and motivation. But when you try to take the giant leap to the big goal, your nervous system is going to go, stop. I can't do that. That's too hard. I'm just going to go back to a behavior that I know that's familiar. I'm going to go back to eating the chocolate or smoking or watching TV. And it's like, and then you start going through the egoic stories. You can't do this. You're not good enough. Only so-and-so can do it. They've got money. They've got this. They've got youth, blah, blah, blah. You start believing the stories again. When all it is literally is neurochemistry. You're in your nervous system. You have to go slow towards these goals. And I like to say you go slow to go fast. That you must give yourself rest. And it took me so long too, Crissy, to understand that rest is the medicine that we need. And our ancestors knew that. They knew that during the winter, you hunker down and you go out for a couple hours a day and you might hunt and whatnot. And then you go back in and you hang out with your family and you draw on the cave walls or you put a puzzle together. You sit by the radio or by the fire, and but you're not pushing and striving. We've, especially as women, that we've been so conditioned to try to be everything to everyone, at the damaging ourselves in the process, and not seeing that the rest is the medicine. And I mean, come on, Albert Einstein, when he was trying to solve problems, he didn't just keep pushing through to figure it out. He would put his stuff down. He might go out for a meditative walk or take a little doze. And then his ideas would come to him. Okay. That's just how the energy comes in, right? We have to be rested and kind of unfocus our eyeballs and let our body kind of hunker down. And then the ideas come. Then the solution comes. But when you're
Yes.
in pushing and forcing mode, believe me, I did it forever and could never figure out why I wasn't making progress. No.
Yeah, and it's not just about resting your body. It's really also a key is resting your mind.
Yes.
Our mind is going so fast all the time. And when we don't give it a break, it's right. It's like, how can you be creative? How can you find your purpose? How can you see the signs that are coming to you every single day and lighting up that path when you're in your mind? And so that rest is our body and our mind. And so I think that that is essential. And I hope people hear that. And when you talk about us as women, I'm so glad you said that because that was going to be one of the questions I brought up to you is you and I have talked about being single moms and how quickly we get lost in prioritizing ourselves because we take on this identity of mom and all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, I, that's all that matters. All that matters is that my kids feel okay, that they have everything that they need, that I am keeping up with what I'm supposed to be doing as a mom so that they don't see all this hard stuff or feel all this hard stuff. I'm going to take care of them. That's my job. And I think, what I would love for you, to share is for the audience here is how do you, or what is it that when women come to you and say, Diane, I'm doing everything. I think I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing as a mom. I'm taking care of my kids and I'm, I feel like I'm showing up to your yoga class. I'm doing the things, but I can't just stop being a mom. I can't just, put myself first because then what's going to happen to my kids? What do you say to those women who are really struggling in that space with young kids as a single mom?
Phew, wow, there's so much I could potentially say. What I would probably want to reflect on first is if I could go back now to and know now, you know, going back to as a young single mom, what would I do differently? Well, number one, taking care of your own physical, mental, spiritual well-being is a priority because when your well is not filled, you cannot pour from an empty cup. I know people have heard this before.
That's my saying, by the way.
Can't. Oh, that's great. Great minds think alike. You can't.
That's right.
Sorry, I've got something in my eye. So what I thought I was doing was kind of filling my cup back in the day. Like I had a therapist. I would, take a nice hot bath. A hot bath is nice, but it's not true self-care. Okay, self-care is learning about yourself. What's the programming there? So I'm not doing enough. What should I be doing? Well, who's saying you should be doing anything? What story is that? Where is that coming from? Is that coming from a TV show? Your mom, your dad, your cousin, someone's, or the other soccer moms? I should be like them. That's a story. That's an egoic story. And that's coming from conditioning of society saying you should be A, B, and C to be a successful mom, to be a good mom. There's lots of ways of being a great mom. And when you start comparing yourself to someone else, that's your first mistake. Now, for me, I was so busy trying to make enough money, have the right job with the right hours so that I could be with my kids and not have to have daycare 13, 14 hours a day. I was constantly trying to figure out the job and money scenario. Should I be doing that job? I was so wound up in that I was missing the picture, like really focusing on caring for my own emotional energy and my children and what they needed from me. Instead, I was up here in my mind trying to figure out all the things. And at the time when I was single, trying to find the right partner so that I could have some help, and not be alone. And I'll just say that right now. It's like, I needed someone to share the burden. And so I took my eye off the ball, to when I have these things, therefore I'll be a better mom. And instead of like, what can I do right now in this moment? And what does being a better mom mean? Does it mean I take my kids out to dinner or buy them the nicest clothes or the newest Nintendo? Maybe. Is that what that means to you? You have to find out, like, value-wise, what is important to you. So again, if I could go back time, if I could turn the clock back, I would slow way down. I would take so many shoulds off my plate. I would just stop and be so present with my kids, like look at them when they're talking to me, not try to cook and clean while they're talking to me because I'm not paying attention because I'm a single mom. I'm doing all these things and therefore I've got to do it all by myself and have my house clean. And it's like, your kids don't care how dirty your house is. They care how present you are. So yeah, I mean, I would slow down and just put all the shoulds away and find out, like, what is so meaningful to you as a human being? And what is your concept of good mom, bad mom? And ask yourself, why do I think that? Whose words are those? Whose concepts are those? Are they really mine? And instead, develop your own definition of what being a good mom is. There's no such thing as a perfect mom. All moms and dads out there are trying to do the best damn thing they can with what they know and the tools they have. Yeah, do they make mistakes? I made a lot of them. Still continue to make mistakes. But everyone out there is doing the best they can. Like I said, with what they know and their skills, right? And how healed they are. So working on yourself, not to heal, to be better, but to be whole, to love yourself more in all of your little quirks and eccentricities and faults. I don't even know if I call them faults. I just call them your little quirky things, instead of looking at yourself with so much judgment. Can you just be softer with yourself? Put your hand on your heart. Am I doing the best I can in this moment? Hell yes. Okay. And what do I need right now? Do I need to rest? Do I need a break? Can I call someone to come hang out with the kids while I take a walk with a friend? Because that will fill your cup too. And I spent so many years trying to do it by myself to prove to people that I could do it myself. And what did I do? I really shot myself in the foot. Instead of saying, hey, could you help me? Hey, how about if I do this to help myself? I would have been way more present and just less of a crazy mom.
Yeah. I mean, the best gift for me has been learning what it means to truly practice self-love, to truly, and it's not, to your point, I love what you said, it's not just a warm bath. Yes, they feel good, and it's good to give yourself those breaks for sure. But it really is tapping into what is our true nature, and then allowing ourselves the space to actually live in that place and move forward from that place instead of what we think we're supposed to be doing because of what the world is showing us we should or shouldn't be doing. And I always say, social media is a blessing and a curse, right? For all of us. And I think the curse is that we look at things and what we see with our eyes is what we think is really happening, and it's not. And people aren't putting out there the hard work, all the struggles that we go through. It's only the beauty that they want us to see. So, but I love that you said that, because there's so much to that. And you hear that all the time: practice self-love, well, I think what it really is tapping into your true nature and then allowing yourself to shine from there.
And when you say that, I think a lot of people don't understand what their true nature is.
Yes, you're right.
I think that they describe themselves, their true nature is like, what does that mean? What is my true nature? Well, okay, I'm selfish. Well, that's not your true nature. Well, I'm motivated. That's not your true nature. Your true nature is love.
Yes.
Your true nature is divinity. Your true nature is perfection. Your true nature is worthiness, holiness. These are not concepts from me. These are concepts from almost every single spiritual tradition out there in spiritual texts. Our true nature is love. So with the teachings that I offer from these sacred concepts, that we have within us a piece of the divine living in this body. So when we can tap into the true nature of the divine, which is perfection, which is holiness, which is worthiness, that depth of divinity, when we tap into that, not in an egoic way, I am divine. No, it's like, my divinity lives here. That's my true nature. So if we just did that, put our hand on our heart and say, okay, how should I act from this moment if I truly believed that I was love, that I was divine, that I'm perfect the way I am? I don't have to do anything to change. I don't have to do anything to heal. If my heart is open and I'm open to my true nature, which is love, that's going to happen. I'm just going to automatically do the things that are going to help to heal. But I don't have to check off boxes to prove my perfection. That's ego. That's our conditioning. You must be A, B, and C to be worthy. I'm already worthy. I'm already whole. I don't have to do anything. Do I want to do something differently? Because of that, it's a drive to do better, to act better, be kinder. That's from our true nature. If we can just come back to that every day. And that's a lesson for myself. I have to remind myself too, because we as humans, we forget all the time. Even spiritual teachers like myself, I have to come back to the truth, because I'll get into my own humanity, my own monkey mind, and my own behavioral patterns, right? And I just sometimes have to stop and say, okay, that's not acting from love. That's not acting from truth. Come back home to yourself. Ask yourself what you need in this moment. Then you can step into that true nature. So if it could just be love, that would change the world if we all connected to that true nature, which is love. And another little interest of mine, I don't teach on this, but an interest of mine is people with near-death experiences, because I just find it so fascinating, because the majority of them, not all, but the majority of them all say the experience of the deep divine love where they were was such a powerful experience. And to me, that's the essence of divinity. If we can tap into that essence of divine love, our lives would change, our children's lives would change, our coworkers' lives would change, because we would be radiating such a depth of unconditional divine love out there into the universe. And that's, I feel like, how we could change the world one person at a time.
Oh, Diane. Now, everyone listening, you know why I love Diane. It's exactly everything she just said. And yes, coming from, we are all love and worthy and whole. And oh, that's it. We, it's that simple. When you actually say it and you break it down, everything else is noise. And that, yeah, it's just that. I'm not even going to say any more there because you said it all. Except I think that we are sisters from another mister.
Right.
I am literally, like you just talked about near death experiences. Okay, that's one of my side passions. Like I'm reading Anita Morjani's book right now. Like I just love it so much because there's so much you can learn from it. And so anyway, that's a
And
whole other talk we could talk about,
offers,
my
to
friend.
me, it offers hope. That and a gentle
Yes.
reminder that because without going into a deep tangent about it, everyone who comes back, their lives are changed. They could be the most hateful, horrible person, and when they have a near-death experience and experience that divine love, their lives are changed. And it's just amazing the power of tapping into that depth of love. Like, yes, action, feeling, but it's like I believe. I mean, yes, feeling, but I believe love is a verb. What can I do in this moment to love this person? Even as I'm walking down the street, can I look up at someone and look in their eyes and say hi, and just send it out, right? The person at the checkout having a bad day. How can I radiate love out to that person? Can I just say, "Hey, looks like you're having a rough day," or "How's your day going?" And you know what? They're going to appreciate that. And each one change one, right? It's just it's a beautiful wave-like effect. When you send that love out, they might go home and be nicer to their kids, and more present in their
Yeah.
body because somebody saw them and appreciated them on any given day. Yes,
And I always say a smile goes a long
smile
way.
goes.
It does. It really does. You never know how it's changing someone's life
You
in that
don't.
moment. And
You don't.
it's such a simple thing. Instead of looking down at your feet and walking through life, look people in the eyes and just smile. It's that simple. And anyway, I could go on and talk to you forever, Diane. And I know this needs to come to an end at some point, but I can't thank you enough. I am so grateful that you agreed to join me today. So many beautiful things came out of this conversation that I know are going to provide people with hope and guidance. But I also want people to find out how they can find out more about you, how they can work with you if they want to. And of course, I'll be providing that in the show notes as well. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing that briefly for the audience, that would be
Sure.
lovely.
My new website is mysticnurse.com, and then you'll find on there links to some live online classes. I have an online yoga video library where people could do a movement practice with me. I also I offer Reiki sessions, which are a form of Japanese energy medicine. I do soul purpose astrology and human design readings to help people also connect to their purpose. And I do what I call soul sessions, which could include any of those things, but it's more of like an individual coaching to help people work through whatever particular issues going on in their life. And every session, I always tell everyone, every session for every human looks different because I just have a lot of tools in my tool belt, and whatever resonates with a particular person, the client, then that's what we'll bring in. So we might bring in some sound, we might bring in some aromatherapy. And I do a lot of work with nervous system regulation. So I bring a lot of science into the practice. helping people to find some regulation in their overtaxed nervous systems. And you can find me again at mysticnurse.com. I'm on Instagram at mysticnurse and on Facebook, Mystic RN. So you could find me in any of those spots.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for being here today. And to those of you who are listening, if you're interested in being a part of the From Mrs. to Me community, you can find us on Facebook at From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce. And I'm really excited to share that Diane, who is here today, and I are also going to be partnering up for a retreat this fall. So stay tuned. You can find out more information in my Facebook community, as well as on Instagram at From Mrs. to Me. So if you enjoyed this episode, please give a review and subscribe so we can keep this going. And as Diane said, and I always say to end this podcast, you can't pour from an empty cup. So keep doing that inner work and loving on yourself. And I'll see you here next time. I hope you enjoyed another episode of From Mrs. to Me, real life stories of real women and their journey of transformation after divorce. I'm Crissy Freeman, and if you like this episode, please drop a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a story to share? Are you ready to inspire other women on their journey through divorce? If so, find me on Instagram at From Mrs. to Me. For more tools and resources on creating your path to transformation after divorce, follow my community on Facebook, From Mrs. to Me, Rediscovering You After Divorce.